The Perfect Swing Prodigy Sample. The entire week at the Masters is filled with social functions for the players. Augusta National members represent some of America's wealthiest industrialists and leaders of finance. The swirl of receptions is the members' chance to mingle with the best professional golfers on earth, and that year they welcomed the opportunity with enthusiasm. Mo, of course, eschewed the receptions. Instead, he played his rounds and then hit his golf balls on the range every day until he was exhausted. Accommodation was provided for the invited amateurs in what was called the Crow's Nest, a small furnished dormitory in the clubhouse attic. Though the Crow's Nest was equipped with 6 beds, none of the other amateurs invited to the 1956 Masters needed to accept Augusta's charity. Players such as the British amateur champ Roger Weatherhead spent the nights in advance of the tournament in expensive Augusta hotels. Mo had the single bathroom in the dormitory and the eye-watering Masters green carpet that covered the dormitory floors all to himself. When the Thursday start finally arrived, Mo was honed, but far from ready. He'd not slept well in the days leading up to this historic debut because he was racked with anxiety about the galleries. 30,000 people curled around the greens and tee boxes. The prospect of the tournament being televised was also giving Mo butterflies. It would be the second time the important event was broadcast on television, and Mo knew that in only a few hours he'd be participating in something historic for golf. A Masters tournament, the dream of his lifetime. Because of his status as the Canadian amateur champ, Mo was paired with his U.S. counterpart, Harvey Ward, as was the Masters tradition. They were followed by Brian Nelson and Kerry Middlecoff, who was the defending champion. Mo was terrified as he waited in the tee box for his chance to drive. Even before the announcer had completed his introduction, Mo had whacked his ball towards the middle of the fairway and was on his way. While his drives were pure and sweet, he found himself again plagued by errors on the greens. After his round, Mo had logged 3 putts 6 times, but finished with a respectable score of 75. It didn't place him at the top of the amateur rankings that day, but as the 4th best amateur, he still had a chance. The next day, however, it was as though Mo had mentally relived his Thursday opener. Luckily for him, there was no cut in the Masters in 1956. His game got worse by 3 strokes the second day, and he was a staggering 18 shots back for the leader, San Francisco's wonderkind, Ken Venturi. Mo knew he needed to burn off nervous energy, so, as always, he headed for the driving range. It was probably the one time in his life when the driving range was not his friend. As he hit his balls with rhythmic cadence, the legendary Sam Snead took notice and watched. After a few minutes, Snead offered Mo a tip on how to correct what he thought was a technical error in the swing. Snead was one of Mo's heroes. He'd won the Canadian Open in 1938, 1940, and 1941. He'd won the Masters twice in the previous 4 years. A tip from Slammin' Sammy had to be right, Mo reasoned. All this time, he'd been hitting the ball wrong. With his powerful focus, Mo hit ball after ball after ball, trying to adapt his swing to Snead's pointers. Hours passed. Mo's hands turned into pads of blisters, and yet he still hit balls. In 4 hours, Mo churned through 800 of them before finally deciding to quit and go to bed. The next morning, it was plainly obvious just how much he'd overdone his practice. His hands were throbbing, bloody, and swollen. Mo tried to play through the pain for his 3rd round, but his condition was excruciating. He was barely able to summon the strength to grip the club, and the shooting pains racing up his arms when his palms clenched destroyed his concentration completely. As he played the first 9 holes that day, his stroke was completely gone. He botched his short game. He cursed himself under his breath for being such an idiot, but it was too late. When Mo realized the voice in his head was ridiculing him just as his critics had been doing all his life, he mentally surrendered. After his putt on the 9th hole, he turned away from the course and headed towards the locker room. Irv Lightstone, who was following Mo along the round, tried to turn him back. He urged Mo to think. This was the Masters. You don't walk off the course of the Masters. But Mo had made up his mind. He couldn't grip a club. There was no way he could continue.
to keep listening to this audiobook. I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.